Historically, when we try to picture the ultimate military advantage, we always kind of picture something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Right, yeah.
Like, the multi-billion-dollar stealth bomber that's kept in some secret, heavily guarded hangar. Or like an aircraft carrier that takes a literal decade to build.
Right, the exquisite stuff.
Exactly. I mean, the defining characteristic of a superpower has basically always been that they can just afford to build the things that nobody else can even dream of.
Yeah, the barrier to entry was, well, it was inherently financial and proprietary, right? Having the biggest, most exclusive hardware on the board, that's what dictated global power.
But looking at the landscape today and looking at the intel we're about to get into, that exclusive hangar door is it's wide open.
It really is.
We're seeing this massive geopolitical shift where the most disruptive capabilities aren't coming from top secret trillion-dollar defense budgets anymore. They're coming from commercial tech, open source software, and just, mass production.
Yeah. It is a complete inversion of how we traditionally think about military supremacy.
Yeah.
We are moving rapidly from an era of exquisite technology to an era of accessible, asymmetric scale.
And just so we're on the exact same page before we get too deep here, when we say asymmetric scale, we're essentially talking about a cheap, highly accessible capability that can completely neutralize a vastly more expensive traditional military asset.
Right, that is the core of it, yeah. Think of David and Goliath, but in this scenario, David can suddenly mass-produce like 1 million guided slingshots using off-the-shelf parts from the internet.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this, because today's mission for our deep dive is to map out exactly how this is happening globally. We've been looking through this really fascinating stack of intelligence reports and think tank assessments from this month, August 2026.
Right.
And we're tracking everything from academic conferences in London to Chinese hackers bypassing AI guardrails, all the way to shifting missile doctrines in Europe. And across all of this analysis, from groups like KTI, ISW, Bloomberg, Recorded Future, OSI.
The whole spectrum.
The whole spectrum. There's just this single undeniable theme. The new asymmetric advantage isn't about building a better weapon. It's about scaling automation, artificial intelligence, and mass precision.
Yes. And to really understand how this shift is happening, we have to kind of start at the very beginning of the supply chain.
Okay.
Because before any nation can build an automated naval fleet or an AI-driven cyber swarm, they need the foundational knowledge first. They need the blueprint.
So before you can build it, you need the research, which I think most people assume military research is this incredibly guarded, closed-loop system, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like men in black suits with briefcases handcuffed to their wrists.
Like out of a movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the recent intelligence suggests that is absolutely not the case.
Not at all. If we look at recent analysis on Sino-Western defense networks, and specifically, there's a recent report from Blue Path Labs that was published by the China Aerospace Studies Institute, the CASTI. It shows that the foundational knowledge is actually being absorbed in plain sight. They cataloged over 130 specific instances of contact and collaboration between defense labs in the People's Republic of China and Western research institutions.
Wait, 131 instances?
Over 130, yeah.
How does that happen without setting off massive alarm bells everywhere?
Well, because it happens in university lecture halls. It happens at academic conferences. It's not cloak and dagger.
Oh, wow.
For instance, the report highlights this recurring event called the International Conference on Defense Technology.
Okay.
Now, it sounds very official and globally neutral, but it is actually co-organized by a group of PRC defense companies alongside researchers from prominent Western institutions, like Imperial College London, for example.
Wait, I read that they literally have Western researchers actively giving lectures to audiences made up primarily of PLA military-industrial officials. Is that right?
That is exactly what's happening.
They're presenting on armor-piercing munitions and UAVs.
Armor-piercing munitions, rocket propulsion, advanced military materials, all of it. The report also flagged individual cross-pollination.
What does that mean?
They tracked a PLA Air Force lab researcher who held affiliations with major American and British engineering and optoelectronic societies.
Ooh, gee.
And this individual was even linked to the U.S. National Science Foundation.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is that it is a systemic leveraging of the global academic ecosystem. It's open exploitation.
It's kind of like, well, it's like inviting your biggest corporate rival to sit in on your internal R&D strategy meetings.
Right.
You're just handing them the roadmap. But I have to ask, I mean, isn't the whole point of global science to be open and collaborative?
It is.
Like, if you start policing an academic conference, don't you risk totally stifling the very innovation that academia is supposed to foster in the first place?
And that is the central tension of modern science right now. Academic freedom thrives on the open exchange of ideas, obviously. But the challenge we are facing today is that almost all modern technology is inherently dual use.
Dual use. Okay, so meaning it has a civilian and a military application.
Exactly. If a researcher at a university makes a massive breakthrough in aerodynamic fluid modeling, that is incredibly useful for making commercial airplanes more fuel efficient. Right?
Yeah.
But that exact same mathematical modeling is absolutely vital for developing hypersonic missiles.
Oh, I see. So the open science is basically just being funneled directly into weapons programs.
Yes. The intelligence emphasizes that this open knowledge flows directly into closed, state-controlled military labs, specifically the massive state-owned defense conglomerates that are known as the Big Nine in China.
Okay.
The open, collaborative system of the West is being systematically utilized to feed a closed military apparatus.
Man. Okay, so they have the foundational research,
Right.
but research on paper doesn't actually enforce a maritime border.
No, it doesn't.
So where are we actually seeing this applied in the physical world? Because I keep reading these reports, these rumors about massive construction projects in the South China Sea. Are they actually building military bases out there?
The physical footprint is expanding very rapidly, and the scale is honestly staggering. According to recent updates from the Institute for the Study of War and the War Zone, satellite imagery confirms the completion of the first stage of construction on a massive artificial island on Antelope Reef. That's in the Paracel Islands.
How massive are we talking here?
Nearly 1,500 acres.
Wow.
Yeah. And the blueprints suggest potential plans for a 9,000-foot runway.
A 9,000-foot runway.
Deepwater piers, helipads. It has the potential to become their largest naval base in the region.
That is not a small scientific outpost. But you know what struck me in the reporting was how these projects are being justified publicly.
Right, the cover story.
Yeah, like at Scarborough Shoal, they announced plans for I think it was a three-dimensional marine environmental observation network.
Yeah, the phrase environmental monitoring is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah.
The South China Sea Institute of Oceanology announced this station, claiming it will have a, quote, sea-based dual core to track ecological issues.
Ecological issues. Right.
But in maritime geopolitics, infrastructure is destiny. A station capable of monitoring pollutants is utilizing the exact same sensor technology required to track foreign vessels and detect military threats.
This is like using an environmental station as a Trojan horse for military domain awareness.
Precisely. And it ties directly into a massive policy shift that was jointly unveiled by their Ministry of Ecology and Environment and the National Development and Reform Commission.
Okay.
It is known as the 2030 Automation Plan.
What is the ultimate goal of that plan? Like, what are they automating exactly?
They are aiming to reduce manual participation in their maritime monitoring network by 70% by the year 2030.
7%.
Yes. They want to transition away from human-crewed ships entirely and rely on automatic marine sampling stations, remote sensing satellites, and massive fleets of unmanned vessels.
Wow.
The China Coast Guard actually published a concept paper outlining how they want to turn these South China Sea islands into what they literally call robotic fortresses.
Robotic fortresses. That sounds intense.
Networked, unmanned vehicles serving as the primary defense force. And they'd be used to enforce territorial claims non-lethally and to counter enemy drones.
Wait, but okay, hear me out. If the future of maritime conflict is just unmanned boats harassing other unmanned boats out in the ocean, I mean, isn't that preferable to sailors actually shooting at each other? Like we saw that recent encounter between a Chinese destroyer and a U.S. drone boat, right?
Yeah, we did.
If they just bump into each other, it keeps human beings out of the line of fire. So why are the analysts so worried about this shift to automation?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, removing the immediate risk to human life is obviously a positive on the surface.
Right.
But from a strategic standpoint, automation removes the natural limitations of biology and logistics.
How so?
Well, human sailors need sleep.
True.
They need
Right.
food. They suffer from low morale. They make errors in judgment when they are exhausted after weeks at sea.
Yeah, they're human.
Exactly. A fleet of autonomous boats does not experience any of that. What a robotic fortress allows a nation to do is maintain a relentless 24/7 enforcement presence.
Oh, I see.
They can physically blockade, they can harass, and they can choke out competitors in disputed waters continuously for years on end without ever firing a single lethal shot. It is a long-term attritional strategy applied to peacetime territorial enforcement.
Man, they just never have to blink.
Never.
Okay, but to run a robotic fortress like that, to process all the data coming in from satellites, underwater sensors, and automated drone fleets all at once, you need an unbelievable amount of computing power.
You do.
And artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But how are they powering all of this if there are strict U.S. export controls on the advanced microchips that you need for AI?
Yeah.
I thought that was supposed to bottleneck them.
It was supposed to, but they're getting through incredibly creative supply chain loopholes.
Really?
Yeah. Despite the bans, Bloomberg actually reported that companies like ByteDance and Tencent recently secured shipments of highly advanced U.S. hardware.
Wow.
Specifically, they acquired about 10,000 NVIDIA H200 chips.
10,000. How does a massive shipment of restricted chips just slip through like that?
They routed them through Hong Kong.
Ah.
By keeping the chips outside of mainland China, they technically complied with certain regulatory frameworks while still maintaining remote access to their processing power.
Okay, that's well.
And what is really brilliant about the strategy is how they divide the AI workload.
Yeah.
Because building an AI happens in two main phases. You have training and you have inference.
Okay, could you break down the difference there for a second?
Yeah.
That seems really key to how they are bootstrapping this whole thing.
Absolutely. So training an AI requires analyzing massive data sets to recognize complex patterns.
Right.
It is computationally exhausting. It requires the absolute best hardware in the world, like those premium NVIDIA chips.
Okay, like studying for the final exam.
Exactly. But once the AI is fully trained and understands the patterns, actually asking it a question and getting a live response that is called inference.
Inference, okay.
And inference requires significantly less computing power. So what they do is they use the limited supply of those premium U.S. chips purely for the heavy lifting of training the models.
Oh, I get it.
And then they run the actual daily operations, the inference, on their own domestic chips.
Oh, wow. So they're essentially just renting the best tech in the world to build the brain, but then they're using their own domestic hardware to operate the body,
Exactly.
ensuring they never become permanently dependent on foreign tech.
Right. And the results of this AI boom, they are already flooding the cyber domain. We are seeing state-sponsored hackers radically scale up their attacks right now.
Yeah.
But interestingly, they aren't relying on the most advanced, expensive proprietary models for this.
They aren't.
No, they are heavily favoring open source AI, particularly a model called DeepSeek.
Wait, why use an open source model if they just went through all the trouble of getting NVIDIA chips to train their own advanced systems?
Guardrails, or rather the total lack of them.
Ah.
DeepSeek is highly capable, but cybersecurity researchers have noted it has significantly lower safety protocols compared to prominent Western models.
Right.
If you ask a standard commercial AI to, write malicious code or map out a company's network vulnerabilities, it will usually refuse.
Yeah.
It has safety filters.
It'll say, like, I can't do that as an AI language model.
Exactly. DeepSeek is much more permissive. Hackers are using it for rapid reconnaissance and generating exploit codes at an industrial scale.
But it's not just the open source models they're using, right?
Mm-hmm.
I read in the intel that they are actively bypassing the strict safety protocols on Western models, too. Like, the report mentioned a group called Slime22 using Anthropic's Claude to hack a Taiwanese tech company.
Yes, and that is a fascinating evolution in cyber tactics. They're relying on a concept called prompt injection, or essentially social engineering the AI.
Social engineering a machine.
Right. Instead of trying to write a virus to break the AI's code, Slime22 simply lied to it.
Okay.
They posed as a legitimate cybersecurity engineer who was conducting a routine penetration test.
Wait, they just told the AI, hey, I'm the good guy, this is an authorized test, and the AI just believed them.
It did. They framed the request within a highly specific professional context that successfully bypassed the AI's ethical filters.
Wow.
The AI thought it was helping secure the network, but it was actually providing the hackers with step-by-step instructions on how to move laterally through the company's internal systems.
That is wild, and here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's how incredibly commercialized this entire ecosystem has become.
Oh, absolutely.
The researchers found these public share drives where a tiny startup, I think it was literally just 10 people, was developing AI hacking tools and selling them for anywhere from $40,000 to $70,000.
Yeah.
And they were selling these malware packages to major state-backed groups like Mustang Panda. Like, state-sponsored hackers are out there buying off-the-shelf malware like it's a standard B2B software subscription.
The barrier to entry has completely collapsed. And this raises an important question because it is a global phenomenon. Recorded Future noted in their report that Iran is applying the exact same playbook.
Really?
Yes. They have deployed AI across the full life cycle of their operations. They're actually using ChatGPT to conduct initial reconnaissance to understand the intricate technological components of U.S. water facilities.
They're just casually asking a public chatbot to explain the infrastructure of a foreign water supply.
Yes, and the vital takeaway here is, again, the asymmetric advantage. The integration of AI does not change the fundamental strategic logic of Iran's or China's cyber goals.
Right. They still want the same things. Exactly. It doesn't give them new objectives. It simply provides a massive, unprecedented boost to their speed, their scale, and their reach. A 10-person team can now execute the volume of operations that used to require 100 elite hackers.
Wow. It all comes back to volume.
Always.
Scaling up cheap, accessible technology to just overwhelm traditional defenses.
Yeah.
And, this isn't just happening in the digital realm with AI and automated boats.
No.
It is currently reshaping the physical battlefield in Europe.
Yeah.
Let's look at the analysis from the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, on this massive doctrinal shift within the Russian military. They're calling it mass precision.
Mass precision. And this represents a profound departure from how military theorists expected modern conventional wars to actually be fought.
Right.
Before recent conflicts, the prevailing assumption among all major powers was that future wars would rely on a small number of exquisite, highly capable, and extremely expensive guided munitions.
The idea being, if you want to hit a target, you use one perfect multi-million-dollar missile and you just know it's going to work.
Exactly. But Russia has adapted away from that model entirely. They are mixing those expensive, exquisite systems with a massive volume of much cheaper precision capabilities.
Okay, like what?
Things like simple loitering munitions, cheap drones, mass-produced rocket artillery.
Okay.
The underlying logic is that scale is ultimately more valuable than perfection. The RUSI report details that the Russian military has deliberately accepted an 8 to 10% penetration rate for these strikes.
Wait, an 8 to 10% success rate?
Yes.
That sounds like an absolute failure on paper. I mean, they're completely fine with 90% of their munitions being shot down or missing the target entirely.
They are, and we really have to look at the math to understand why this works.
Okay.
Because this is the very definition of asymmetric scale. Let's say you fire one highly advanced missile that costs $10 million.
Okay.
The enemy tracks it, they fire a sophisticated interceptor, and they shoot it down. Your success rate is 0, and you are out $10 million.
Not a good day.
Now, instead, imagine you manufacture 100 cheap drones at $10,000 apiece.
Okay, so that costs you $1 million total.
Exactly. You launch all 100 at once. The enemy now has to fire 100 of their sophisticated, highly expensive interceptor missiles just to stop them.
Right.
If they miss even 10 of those cheap drones, the target is destroyed. The defense is completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume. It forces the defender to spend tens of millions of dollars to shoot down a swarm that cost a fraction of that price.
It's like transitioning from a highly calibrated sniper rifle to a shotgun that fires guided pellets.
That's a great way to put it.
You don't need every single pellet to hit perfectly.
Yeah.
You just need enough of them in the air to completely exhaust the defense system's magazine.
Furthermore, in a prolonged attritional conflict, mass precision is practically the only mathematically sustainable way to fight.
Right.
The Russian military realized that you cannot simply hit a target once. You have to conduct repeated, sustained strikes on the same target to keep it suppressed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you physically cannot afford to do that if every single strike requires a proprietary $10 million weapon.
Of course not.
Relying on simple munitions creates immense logistical complexity behind the scenes. I mean, you have to transport and coordinate thousands of weapons instead of just one.
Right.
But it allows for endless attritional pressure.
They need cheaper munitions in follow-on waves just to maintain the disruption. It completely shifts the math of conventional deterrence.
It does. Now, the analysts at RUSI do point out that this doctrine might be less applicable to a fast-paced conflict with a highly integrated alliance like NATO.
Okay, why is that?
Because in that specific scenario, the initial period of war is considered decisive, so a military would prioritize immediate effect and high penetration probability over cheap, prolonged attrition.
Okay, that makes sense.
But regardless of the scenario, this agile mass production targeting process, this integration of the cheap with the exquisite, is permanently shaping their future way of war.
So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at the whole board here, from academic conferences in London to 1,500-acre artificial islands in the South China Sea, from 10-person startups selling AI malware to skies filled with cheap loitering munitions, the picture is incredibly clear.
The barrier to entry for advanced warfare has rapidly and permanently dropped.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to invent the technology from scratch anymore. You can just absorb the blueprint from a university research paper.
Right.
You don't need to build a massive semiconductor industry. You can buy top-tier chips through a loophole for training and then just use the cheap ones for the rest.
Exactly.
You don't need 1,000 master hackers. You can just prompt inject an open-source AI to do the work for you. And you don't need a perfect invincible missile. You just need 1,000 cheap ones. Volume and scale are the new ultimate weapons.
Which leaves us with a rather unsettling implication, honestly.
What's that?
Well, we have spent this entire deep dive looking at how nation-states' global powers are exploiting open-source AI and commercially available hardware to automate their front lines and massively scale their cyber attacks for a fraction of the traditional cost.
Right.
But if the barrier to advanced automated warfare is dropping this quickly and this cheaply, how long until non-state actors, rogue corporations, or even highly motivated individuals achieve military parity with actual governments?
Wow. Yeah, when the cost of admission to superpower capabilities goes from billions of dollars to, a broadband connection, the 3D printer, and a commercial AI model, the whole concept of David versus Goliath changed completely.
It really does.
Especially when David can mass produce 1 million guided slingshots. That is definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and as always, keep asking questions and stay curious.